Well, joining me now in the studio for more is Tamir, the executive director of J Street Israel. Nadav, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Khaled.
Now, of course, Senators Sanders and Warren speak for themselves. They don't speak to J Street. They did create headlines, though, with their comments, especially on the issue of tying U.S. aid, military aid specifically, to Israel's policies towards the Palestinians. Let me just ask you, is that a position that J Street endorses?
First of all, it's important to say that the J Street conferences always had all kinds of voices, and Senator Sanders, Senator Warren are great friends of J Street, but they don't speak for J Street.
Right, I did say that.
Yes. Our position is that not limit, not condition, but do regulate, just like U.S. is doing in any other country and any other aid, to make sure that the aid is being used for the purposes that it was created for and for the values and the interest of the U.S. And the hurting Palestinians in the territories is not part of that. And it's not helping Israel's security as well. So this is J Street position, that the U.S. should make sure that this assistance is not being used for things that are against American values and interests.
Okay, so that is in line with what the Senators Warren and Sanders said. Now, let's look at J Street, because what you just said is certainly neither welcome statements for most of certainly the current Israeli government, and for many of those even not in the government, and is a little outside, of course, the mainstream of where most American Jewish organizations dealing with Israel are. So J Street's in an interesting position. On one hand, you have the Biden administration stressing the two-state solution and perhaps welcoming, and the Democratic Party in power more welcoming to J Street than the previous administration. But if we look at the current political cycle in Israel, I can't rarely a time during an election season when the Palestinian issue is so, let's say, either off the agenda or such a minor part of the agenda. So how does that impact on J Street, its current position vis-a-vis the political situation in Washington and Jerusalem?
First of all, you said that J Street doesn't represent the mainstream of the Jewish organizations, which is true, but it does represent the mainstream of the grassroots. If you see in polls in the Jewish community, J Street is standing in the center of where the Jewish community is, and very much in line with the administration and with most of the Democratic Party in Congress. And you saw from Schumer and Pelosi to Warren and Sanders, all of them were there, including very high level from the administration. So we're happy to going back to offense rather than defense, which we were in the last 4 years of the Trump administration. In terms of Israel, it's quite clear that not only on our issues, on almost anything, there's no ability to make decisions. And this makes American leadership even more critical. And we saw in some cases in the past where things did not happen from here, and American leadership helped it. We saw it when Carter actually helped Begin achieve peace with Egypt when the opportunity came. You saw Bush 41, and his Secretary of State Baker being able to start the Madrid conference after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the first Gulf War. So American leadership is critical, and this is where J Street is acting. I'm here. But as an Israeli, I do want J Street to succeed because I believe this is good for my country.
Right. I dare to say in the current political situation, the director of J Street U.S., Jeremy Ben-Ami, maybe has a slightly easier job than you have here in Israel, but there's the challenge. Now, certainly the conference did gather plenty of notice and some criticism. Several commentators on the right especially attacked the address, it was a virtual, of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Danny Danon, the former Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, tweeted, J Street, Peace Now U.S., you may tell yourselves you are assisting the state of Israel with your actions, but you, in fact, you are fueling the fires of hatred against the Jewish state. Shame on you. Former U.S. Ambassador Israel David Friedman also chimed in, this in reference to Abbas. He doesn't condemn terror rewards and praises terrorists in violation of U.S. law and claims the Jews brought the Holocaust upon themselves. Look who's headlining this year's J Street conference. I want to give you a chance to respond to those, Nadav.
Well, you know, for those who think that what's good for Israel is one state where eventually we will have to decide whether we are a democracy or a homeland for the Jewish people, J Street positions and Abbas positions, and other speakers are not in line, for sure. But we see it very differently. We see it as an existential a priority for Israel, if we want to remain a homeland for the Jewish people and a democracy, to have a two-state solution. And in order to have a two-state solution, you also need a Palestinian partner. What Friedman was trying to do is a peace process without one of the parties is not going to work. And we see it very differently. I respect the comments, but thankfully this is not the Trump administration anymore. And I believe that today J Street is closest to the American administration than any other Jewish organization.
I think rhetorically that is the case. But let me ask you, Nadav, the Biden administration has a lot on its plate, and it seems to be making policy not to, certainly, and I may be understating matters, rushing into reviving the peace process between Israel and the Palestinians. So is J Street concerned about that the rhetoric may match, but the actions of the Biden administration won't match the rhetoric?
Well, we are realistic. We know that nothing major can happen when Israel doesn't have a government, when the Palestinians are about to have elections, when there are so many things that the Biden administration should deal with internally, externally, China, climate change, NATO, you name it, it's there. But there is one priority that we are supporting right now, and that is re-entering to the JCPOA, the agreement with Iran, which we believe was better than the other alternatives, and we might be a good platform to get a longer and stronger agreement. So this is something that the Biden administration is busy with, and we're trying to help. In terms of an agreement with the Palestinians, we understand that we will have to wait, and what we're trying to do right now is at least to reverse the harmful things that the Trump administration did, and to try to block things that will not let us get to a two-state solution when there is a political environment for negotiations.
All right, well, that may be reviving the Iran agreement may be a particularly hard sell in Israel, Nadav Tamir, but as I said, you have your work cut out for you here.
I would surprise you to say that most of the security people that I speak to that are not in uniform are supporting our positions.
Okay, Nadav Tamir, J Street Israel, thank you for joining us on i24 News. And still to come on The Run.